Hi, welcome. So in this video, we are going to continue looking at some statistics functions. Remember in the last video, we looked at some count functions like count, count A, count blank, and then count if. So we are just going to continue looking at some other statistics functions. Count if is still one of them, and then look at things like sum if, average if. So let's just go straight and do just that. So I'll go here. Okay, so let's look at this count function. Now create a new sheet and just call it statistics function. Okay, and then we'll just take this same data of the last session. So if you haven't seen it, you can just go back and look at it, and then we paste here. So I'll just increase the size here so you can see. And then so this is our data set. So we are going to look at count if. Saw it last video, but we'll just look at count if again. Count if, look at sum if, and then we'll look at average if. So like we get an idea just from the phrase. So it's a count with an if condition in it. So let's say, for example, you wanted to count the number of times that a specific name appears, like John. You have John here, you have John again. So you might have a very long data which is having like maybe 1 million rows. So if you want to count the number of times a specific name occurs like this, for example, you would use a count if, which says count if the name is John. So what it's going to do is going to say John is here one time, that's a count. John is here the second time, that's two, and then it ends there. So it can help you to count specific occurrence of a specific text or a value. So we're going to just go to count if, then it's going to ask for the range. The range in this case is this where you want the whole range of values you want to count the value from. So the range here is here, and then you click comma. The next thing is highlighted, criteria. So it's saying what is the criteria you want to count there. So in this case, you just do John, type John here as a text, put it in quotes because it's a text, then you close the bracket. So when you press enter, it's 2. So it means it counts John appears 2 times. So let me just say, for example, I added it, change maybe this Mary to John. Now you see you have John here 3 times. And then if we were to count, say, number of times Mary occurs, press enter, you see it occurs, Mary is here 1 time. And if we put back the Mary that we took out, we have here Mary two times. So it can help you to just look at a long list and count the number of times a certain value occurs. Now, sum if works almost in that same logic. So you are able to say, I want you to sum if John occurs. So you need to show what are you checking and what are you summing. So if you look at the syntax here, equal to sum. If here, it says at the cell specified by a given condition or criteria. So let me double click. There is a range. The range will be this one. There is a criteria, which is it should be John. Then there is a sum range, which is going to sum the occurrence of John, and you need to show that this is the range. So let's say you could have had sales here, you could have had maybe the cost here, you could have had even profits here. So what do you want to sum about John? That is like the sum if. So let's say we go to the range here. Here is the range. What's the criteria? Criteria is John again. Go to John, comma. Now, which range are you summing? Is it the sales? Is it the cost? If there was cost here, is it the profit? Which column are you interested in? Interested in the sales. So now I press enter, and then I get 31. So If you understand it, this is what happens. It says sum if John, so it first checks if John is here, this is 1, then it takes 30 and it keeps it aside. I've seen 30 that belongs to John. Let's say John here. Now it checks again. Is there John? No John. Yes, I've seen another John, and it's 1. So it takes another John again and it's 1. Now it takes the sum of this. The sum of this, as you can see here, is 31. So 30 plus 1, 31. That's how it does. So if there were many occurrences of John, it's going to pick each one and sum it. So it's the same thing that happens with the average if. If you, same thing, equal to average if, the range again, here is the range, comma, the criteria, John, then again, now which range do you want to get the average from? Want to get the average of sales. It could have been the average of cost, it could have been the average of profit. So we select this and then we say, we press enter. So you see we have 15.5. So again, it took John, it noted 30, it took John again, it noted 30, then it took the average of it. So it did the average of it, average of these two. Then it came out 15.5. So remember, we are not really going to show you all the formulae. As you can see, there are so many formulae in Excel, so many financial, logical, text, data, lookup, math, trigonometry, more. There's for engineering, statistical, information, compatibility. So there are lots of formulae, but the key is just to understand this syntax and be able to remember the names of the formula that you want to use. Maybe you can just Google search, check, and then you know this is the syntax. It requires a range, like you saw here. Here it requires a range. After the range, there's a criteria. After the criteria, there is a sum range, and then you just put in the values. So another set of functions which are stats related are like count ifs. Now s at the end, count ifs, sum ifs, and then even average ifs. So this count ifs, it now takes multiple criteria. So if I just put if I just go equal to count ifs, this one, it says counts the number of cells specified by a given set of conditions or criteria. So you give a couple of conditions, and at the end now is able to count the number of times that those conditions are met. So in this case, like if you have looked at the previous videos, it's like an and. All the conditions need to be met. This needs to be met, and this condition, and this condition. Then it's going to count the time that all those conditions are met. So if I go to count ifs, for example, you see it tells me give me one criteria range 1, and its criteria. So which means I can say this is the first criteria range, and the criteria there is John. So I'm going to put here the criteria here is John. Okay, no. So let me just put this here, and the criteria here is John. So now if you press comma, what do you see? It goes to the second criteria range and the next criteria. So let me show you, which means if there was, for example, name, and then let me just say before sales, you had something like if the person was punctual or not. So let me just pull this way, and then we just talk about punctuality, which means that here we can say the punctuality was good. Then let me just see if the other punctuality of John was bad, for example. Then let's just put good, good, and then maybe we put bad, So we are counting now 2 criteria. So we are saying count if John occurs here, and also if the punctuality, if he was punctual, is good. So the first John was good, but the second John was bad. So we expect that it should only take this one and count as 1. So if you go here, say equal to count ifs. Now, where is the first range? This is the first range. This is the first range, comma, John. Now, what's the second range? This is the second range. And what's the criteria there? Good. So if we close that, you see we get exactly the one as we expected. So if, for example, this other John here was good as well, then we get 2. So it checks the 2 conditions need to be met for it to get that value. So it's almost the same thing here for the sum ifs. You just need to look at the syntax and do almost the same thing. So this is equal to now sum ifs with the s. It first says give me a sum range. So it first says first give me the range you want to sum first before you move on to the criteria range and the criteria. So it starts with the sum first. So here we are saying, for example, here is the sum range. For example, here's the sum range. Then now it says, okay, now that I have the sum range, start putting your criteria. As many criteria as you want, it doesn't matter. Criteria 1 range 1 is this one. Check first of all if and the criteria is John. Now next again, criteria range 2 and its criteria. Range 2 is here, comma, check if it is good. Then we close it and we press enter. So you see we got 31 because all the 2 Johns are good. And if we change this one to bad, we get just 30, which says that this is the only John that is good and this is the sum of his sales. So with this, it's almost the same thing with the average ifs, which is just the same thing. You say equals to average ifs. What is the average range? So this is the range. I want to get the average of sales. So now you should be getting used to this syntax, average range. And then what is the first criteria range? It's about the name first. Check for John. Then now, what is the second criteria range? It's about the punctuality. And then check for good. Good. Close this. So with this now, you get an average of 30 because that's the only good. Now if I take this to good, you get that average of 15.5 because the both are good and it's doing the same thing here. So I hope with this you're able to continue with other statistics functions, and even with the previous videos of count functions and the if and the and that we've done. Just go take a look at it and you should be more comfortable now with the syntax of Excel and be able to build formulae as quickly as you want. And maybe if you have any issue, you can just Google to remind you of maybe what's the name of the formula or what does this syntax mean again, but then it should be getting easier for you. So hope you understand everything and you're now able to move on smoothly. We are going to continue with the other functions subsequent videos. Wish you good data log. Keep learning. Thank you.